All right, fans of music, welcome back. It is Dave, the Real Music Observer, observing real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. Chicago and their slow demise. For the last 30 plus years, we've reached a point now where the band has continued to carry on with a singer who probably should be doing karaoke or back in his old band, Brass Transit. This is my opinion. I mean, you may disagree. I was a big fan of Jeff Coffey. I was a big fan of Jason Scheff. Moreover, I was a really big fan of Peter Cetera. And even though I've kind of gone back and forth on why Peter decided to skip out on both the Songwriters Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think there's something else going on within Chicago that has caused a blockage of some kind of difficulty, a personality defect. I believe that as one who tries to analyze things, I think Robert Lamb at this point is the de facto leader of this group. And I think he started taking those reins back when he got Lou Pardini in the band. And it's not that he's done horrible things, but there's an element to all of this where you say to yourself, how did they get where they are now? And you got to go back to Chicago 17. This is an album that set the world on fire, okay? This was David Foster at his peak as a producer. This was Peter Cetera at his peak as a singer and songwriter and arranger along with Foster as they worked together. This is an album where basically Robert Lamb checks out. He checked out for a good portion of the 1980s. He called much of the music Chicago did crap. Not directly, but he said, hey, if it's crap, I'd rather not have a hit song with crap. Referring to like Diane Warren, who wrote the band's biggest charting #1 single, fastest charting #1 single in history, and that's a tune that Bill Champlin sang called Look Away. So it's very complicated, but the truth is the band decided, because they didn't want to have a front man, they didn't want to give Peter his separate bus or whatever else he was asking for. Which, by the way, after 17, think of it this way. Your star quarterback has an amazing season. And you say, do we re-sign this guy, or we just cut him loose and let someone else pick him up? And they decided to cut him loose after he produces. Who's to know what Chicago 18 would have been if Cetera was still there? I have a hunch that this little tune called Glory of Love would have been on there. And who knows what else. You sit down again with the reason that Peter ditched Foster is because Foster went back and produced 18 for Chicago, which was bizarre, but that's what happens if you're a producer. He probably looked at it as a challenge to try to produce Jason Scheff and try to make Jason sound like Peter, which was admitted in the documentary. But these guys, they couldn't figure out MTV. Who do we put in front of the camera? You put Peter Cetera right now. He's photogenic. He's in shape. He sings like a bird. He's got confidence now, which he didn't have. And they sort of made fun of Peter in the 70s. And, they had this little clip where he couldn't talk and he just kind of mumbled because he didn't have a lot of self-confidence. But as soon as If You Leave Me Now hit big, and I think maybe after Baby What a Big Surprise, Peter probably said to himself, I think I can do this. And he did it, and he became much more self-confident. He wanted to record solo albums. I would have said, Peter, do what you want to do, brother, because you're our bread and butter at this point. But these guys, I'm sorry, when I think of it, I think their egos took over, and they said, you know what, we're just going to be Chicago without Cetera. No one person is more important than this band. And yes, that is really nice to put down on paper. But if you let your star quarterback go and you fill him in with a guy who's really a good second string quarterback, but he's nowhere near what that first quarterback brought to the band or to the team, and you kind of lie to yourselves throughout the years and say, yep, we're just as strong, feeling stronger every day, Chicago, you ain't seen nothing yet, Chicago. We know that the Chicago's recording days, those best days are long gone. They ended after 17, although 18 was good, wasn't as good as 17, although 19 was a brilliant achievement by Ron Nevison, who had the guts to go with Bill Champlin as vocalist on 3 top 10 singles. The band then kind of dropped the ball because they were out on tour so much that they didn't really oversee Chicago 21, and that allowed some lousy, sort of wimpy drum mixes to get to the record label, and it's just sad because it's a really good album. Chasing the Wind should have been another look away. Of course, music was beginning to change, the 90s came along, but if you keep Cetera, the force of this band was Cetera in it. Champlin and Cetera, who, by the way, work off each other wonderfully and were a great mix together. That band goes well into the 90s and does do well on adult contemporary radio. There were little spurts and sputters here and there, like Here in My Heart, which was on a compilation, which again, Champlin took most of the vocals with a little help from Jason Sheff. That was really their last gasp. You can say they tried on Chicago 30 with Feel and stuff like that, and that came out. The first week did good on adult contemporary stations, and then it just died. And then their last album, I think, was a really good album, but it's a different band. Without Cetera, it's a different band, and you can't pretend that it's not. Jason Sheff brought a lot to the table, and he did as well as he could have under the circumstances. But all of the stuff the band has been dealing with today is mainly because they want to keep touring a lot, okay, which they don't really need to tour a lot. Cetera goes out and does an occasional date. Imagine if it were Chicago that was going out to do the occasional date. How big those concerts would be, how they could fill large venues, and they wouldn't be killing themselves on the road like they've been doing for the last, 50 years, okay? So my perspective in this video is that Chicago's demise began when they said to Cetera, no, we're not gonna do what you want us to do. And some people would think, well, good, he deserved it. But he really didn't deserve it. If he's writing these big hit songs and he's helped revitalize the band and bring them back into superstar status with their biggest selling album of all time, which, by the way, the band seems now very indifferent to their 80s period. They don't seem very happy about actually playing these songs. They do small nods to it. I don't even think they're playing anything off of Chicago 19. If they are, they're doing like the medley thing, and it's just sad. And they've gotten to a point now where they've got a singer who should be in a tribute band, who's in their band, who really doesn't sound like anybody from the past. I would take Coffey, I would take Sheff, and of course Cetera should still be there. But he's not. Who knows? Peter might have left later. We don't know that. But these guys should have done everything in their power to keep Peter Cetera in the group, and that's why they are where they are right now. And chart-wise, their demise was quick after Cetera left. It was only 4 or 5 years later, and they really had trouble getting hits on the radio. And that, the fact that Robert Lamb said, all this music is crap, and I don't want to have a hit with crap. I'd rather fail on my own than have a hit with crap. Well, a bunch of people love the crap that was on Chicago 17. So there you go. That's my perspective. See you soon.